love, power, and the betrayal that almost destroyed Lagos' most powerful woman. In Lagos Island, power is currency. Trust is leverage. And love is the most dangerous investment of all. She was Bisola Ojo, a woman who built empires from blueprints and discipline. A real estate titan. Respected. Untouchable. A name that opened doors and closed negotiations. He was Adebayo Oni, a struggling founder with ambition in his eyes and failure knocking at his door. They met as strangers, at a charity event meant to change lives. But fate had other plans. She gave him love. She gave him access. She gave him opportunity. What she didn't know was that behind the smiles, behind the whispered "I love you," a betrayal was being carefully calculated. Secrets were sold. An empire nearly collapsed. And the man she trusted most became her greatest threat. This is not just a love story. This is a lesson about power. About insecurity. And about what happens when ambition chooses greed over loyalty. Stay with us. Because in this story, the truth doesn't just hurt. It destroys. Welcome to African Stories by Frank Asada. Where are you watching from? Before we dive into the love, power, and the betrayal that almost destroyed Lagos' most powerful woman story, we encourage you to rate the video and tell us in the comments below. Let us know where you are watching from. Like, share and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up. Bisola Ojo built her life the way she later built cities, deliberately, quietly, and with an unshakable belief in structure. Born into a middle-class Lagos household where discipline mattered more than comfort, she learned early that excellence was not optional. Her parents emphasized education as survival, and she absorbed that lesson deeply. From secondary school onward, Bisola showed an unusual hunger for mastery, not just success. She watched Lagos grow chaotically around her and wondered why development had to be ugly, inefficient, and exclusionary. That curiosity would later become her weapon. Even as a young woman, she moved with a sense of inevitability, as though she already knew she would occupy powerful rooms, and intended to earn every inch of space within them. Bisola's academic journey took her through Nigeria's best institutions and later abroad, where she studied urban planning, finance, and commercial real estate development. She trained under global firms, absorbing how cities could be transformed without erasing dignity. Returning to Lagos, she entered an industry dominated by men who underestimated her precision. She outworked them, outplanned them, and outlasted them. By her mid-30s, Bisola was no longer chasing opportunity chased her. Her company developed luxury and mixed-use properties across Lagos Island, reshaping skylines and influencing zoning decisions. She moved among governors, bankers, and foreign investors with quiet authority. Bisola Ojo was not just wealthy, she was powerful, respected, and deeply aware of the cost of that position. They met during a social fundraising outreach her company sponsored for an underdeveloped waterfront community on the outskirts of Lagos Island. The event was meant to be symbolic, corporate responsibility paired with public goodwill, but Bisola treated it seriously. As she walked through the crowd, she noticed Adebayo Oni not because he stood out, but because he blended in differently. While others chased introductions and cameras, he listened to residents, asked practical questions, and took notes as though their struggles mattered beyond optics. His presence felt sincere. When Bisola approached, he did not flatter her or pitch himself. He spoke thoughtfully about infrastructure gaps and technology solutions, surprising her with his grounded intelligence. It was the first moment she looked at someone and didn't feel the imbalance of power dominate the conversation. Their conversations deepened quickly after that first meeting. Adebayo spoke openly about his startup, a modest technology company struggling to survive in Lagos's brutal ecosystem. He did not complain, he explained. Bisola, accustomed to guarded interactions, found his transparency disarming. She spoke about her company's challenges, the compromises power demanded, and the loneliness that came with success. They discovered shared values, impact, dignity, and the belief that growth should include people, not erase them. Lagos nights turned into long dinners, quiet drives across the bridge, and debates about the city's future. Romance unfolded naturally, rooted in admiration rather than desperation. For the first time in years, Bisola allowed herself to be emotionally present, believing she had found someone who saw her as a woman, not just a brand. Despite warnings from friends, board members, and even family, Bisola leaned into the relationship. Many questioned Adebayo's intentions, but Bisola trusted her judgment. Adebayo genuinely loved her at first. He admired her intellect, her discipline, her refusal to apologize for power. He felt chosen, validated, elevated. Lagos society watched them closely, whispering behind smiles, but love made them careless. They believed affection could outrun hierarchy. Bisola invested emotionally without calculation, opening her private world to someone she believed understood her. She imagined partnership, legacy, and shared purpose. In those early days, betrayal seemed impossible, not because she was naive, but because trust felt mutual, solid, and deeply earned. Bisola helped Adebayo deliberately, not recklessly. She paid for executive courses and advanced business certifications that could sharpen his credibility. She insisted he earn knowledge, not favors. Each investment came with expectations of growth and independence. She never framed her support as rescue, it was opportunity, structured and respectful. Adebayo initially thrived under this guidance, absorbing lessons and applying them diligently. Bisola felt pride watching him grow, believing she was witnessing the emergence of a man stepping into his own power. She avoided publicly associating her name with his achievements, wanting him to stand alone. At home, they celebrated milestones quietly. Bisola believed empowerment meant giving someone tools, not ownership. At the time, it felt like love expressed responsibly. When Adebayo's startup needed funding, Bisola approached it as a business decision, not a romantic gesture. She structured the investment transparently, involving legal counsel and insisting on governance safeguards. Her board raised concerns about optics, but Bisola held firm. She believed in separating emotion from enterprise. Adebayo signed agreements, accepted oversight, and promised performance. For a while, the company stabilized. Small wins followed, new clients, press mentions, invitations to industry mixers. Bisola introduced him to mentors, not patrons, ensuring he learned to navigate elite spaces himself. She wanted him respected, not carried. Their relationship seemed balanced on the surface, built on mutual growth. But beneath that balance, a quiet tension was beginning to form. As Adebayo entered elite circles, the contrast became unavoidable. He wore tailored suits and spoke confidently, but Lagos society measured lineage and wealth ruthlessly. People praised him politely, then credited Bisola in private. Introductions often framed him as Bisola's partner or one of her projects. Invitations felt conditional. While Bisola commanded rooms effortlessly, Adebayo felt scrutinized. She noticed his discomfort but assumed it was temporary. Growth required patience. She believed time would legitimize him. Yet each elite gathering reinforced a silent hierarchy that love could not erase. What Bisola saw as opportunity, Adebayo increasingly experienced as exposure. The imbalance they ignored at home was magnified publicly, and resentment began to quietly replace gratitude. Whispers followed Adebayo everywhere. Some were subtle, others cruel. He overheard jokes questioning his worth, his ambition, his masculinity. Success still bore Bisola's name, never his. Even when he spoke intelligently, people listened as though indulging him. The humiliation was invisible but constant. At home, he smiled, but alone he questioned everything. Was he truly capable, or merely well-funded? Was love enough to overcome permanent comparison? Adebayo began to feel trapped between gratitude and bitterness. He loved Bisola, but resented the power she wielded effortlessly. Her success no longer inspired him, it reminded him of what he lacked. That emotional fracture made him vulnerable to voices that promised validation at any cost. Jealousy did not arrive loudly. It seeped in quietly, disguised as self-reflection. Adebayo convinced himself he needed independence at any cost. He began withholding frustrations from Bisola, fearing she would dismiss them as insecurity. Each compliment she received felt like a personal failure. The city praised her brilliance while reducing him to an accessory. He began to see her support not as generosity, but as proof he would never escape her shadow. Love became complicated, entangled with pride and wounded masculinity. In trying to protect his ego, Adebayo isolated himself emotionally. What once felt like partnership slowly transformed into silent competition, one he was already losing. Rivals of Bisola's company noticed the cracks before Bisola did. Lagos business circles thrive on observation, and Adebayo's discomfort was visible to those trained to exploit weakness. Executives from competing firms began engaging him casually, offering praise that felt overdue. They acknowledged his ideas, validated his intelligence, and subtly implied he deserved more recognition. For the first time in months, Adebayo felt seen as an individual. The conversations were harmless at first: industry gossip, speculative discussions, shared frustrations. But beneath the surface, intention brewed. They did not rush him. They waited patiently, knowing insecurity softens even the strongest moral boundaries. Eventually, offers followed compliments. Small consulting fees for general insights. Harmless information, they claimed: market timing, supplier behavior, strategic direction already rumored publicly. Adebayo hesitated. He knew the line he was approaching. But they framed it as fairness, not betrayal. Everyone does it, they said. You deserve compensation. He rationalized the act, convincing himself Bisola would never notice. After all, she had built an empire, what harm could fragments cause? That rationalization became his permission. The first breach felt small. The second felt easier. Each transaction dulled his conscience further, replacing guilt with entitlement. As the exchanges escalated, Adebayo's internal conflict intensified. He told himself he was reclaiming power, not stealing. He believed he was correcting imbalance. Yet every step deeper bound him tighter to secrecy and fear. He compartmentalized his life, separating love from deception, affection from betrayal. Bisola remained unaware, trusting him implicitly. At night, he lay beside her, haunted by what he had done, yet unwilling to stop. Pride outweighed remorse. He believed control justified his actions. What began as insecurity had transformed into deliberate treachery, masked by affection and silence. The consequences unfolded gradually. Competitors began preempting Bisola's bids with alarming precision. Confidential strategies appeared elsewhere before execution. Land negotiations collapsed mysteriously. At first, Bisola attributed it to market volatility. Lagos was unpredictable. But patterns emerged too consistently to ignore. Someone was watching closely, too closely. Each failed deal carried financial loss and reputational risk. Investors questioned her oversight. Her confidence wavered, not in vision, but in trust. The empire she had built brick by brick began to tremble, not from incompetence, but from invisible sabotage. Bisola responded decisively. She audited departments, restructured teams, and replaced senior executives. Loyalty tests intensified. Sleepless nights became routine. She questioned processes she had perfected for years. The pressure mounted as partners grew impatient. Media speculation followed, sharp and unforgiving. Lagos celebrated success loudly but punished vulnerability brutally. Bisola felt the weight of expectation pressing down on her like concrete. Never once did suspicion drift toward Adebayo. Love shielded him completely. The idea that betrayal could come from within her home felt unthinkable. As losses accumulated, Bisola internalized the crisis. She replayed decisions endlessly, searching for errors. Self-doubt crept in, unfamiliar and unsettling. She withdrew emotionally, focused entirely on damage control. Adebayo noticed the distance but misinterpreted it as weakness. Instead of remorse, he felt vindicated, proof that she was not invincible. That distorted perception hardened his resolve. He continued leaking information, now convinced his actions were justified. The woman he once admired now appeared vulnerable, and vulnerability emboldened him further. By the fifth major breach, the situation became existential. Foreign investors froze funding. Regulatory scrutiny intensified. Competitors moved aggressively, sensing blood in the water. Bisola's empire stood on the edge of collapse for the first time in her career. Lagos buzzed with speculation. Allies distanced themselves quietly. In private moments, Bisola confronted fear she had never known, the fear of losing everything she had sacrificed for. Still, love blinded her to the true source of the damage unfolding around her. Salvation arrived unexpectedly through an old friend, someone who had known Bisola before success reshaped her life. Quiet, methodical, and deeply observant, he suggested what others avoided: betrayal rarely comes from strangers. It comes from proximity. At first, Bisola resisted the implication. But desperation overcame denial. She authorized a private investigation, not knowing she was inviting the most painful truth of her life. The investigator approached the task without emotion, tracing access logs, financial anomalies, and behavioral patterns. What he found would unravel everything Bisola believed about trust. The evidence was undeniable. Secure document access correlated perfectly with Adebayo's movements. Financial trails revealed unexplained income streams. Communication patterns aligned with competitor activity. Each discovery felt like a physical blow. Bisola read the reports in silence, her composure intact but her heart shattering internally. The betrayal was complete, intimate, and devastating. The man she loved had not stumbled, he had chosen. Trust collapsed under the weight of proof. Yet even in pain, Bisola refused emotional reaction. She chose strategy. Bisola did not confront Adebayo. She did not cry, shout, or demand explanations. Instead, she designed a test. Fake expansion plans, inflated projections, carefully crafted documents laced with subtle inaccuracies. She watched patiently. Adebayo took the bait without hesitation, delivering the false information confidently. The final betrayal confirmed everything. Bisola's grief hardened into resolve. Love had failed, but intelligence would not. The competitors acted swiftly, attempting to execute strategies based on the stolen documents. When projections collapsed under scrutiny, they panicked. Realizing they had been deceived, they turned on Adebayo violently. Threats followed. Deals were withdrawn. Protection evaporated. The same people who praised him now haunted him. For the first time, Adebayo faced the full cost of betrayal without Bisola's shield. Fear replaced arrogance. Survival became his only priority. Desperate and exposed, Adebayo confessed everything to Bisola. The admission came without excuses, only shame and terror. He begged for forgiveness, protection, understanding. Bisola listened silently, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she stood, thanked him for honesty, and walked away. Her response was not vengeance, it was accountability. Love no longer influenced her decisions. Bisola involved government agencies immediately, handing over meticulously documented evidence. Investigations escalated quickly. Raids followed. Shell companies collapsed. Executives were arrested. Lagos watched in stunned silence as a major corporate scandal unraveled. Adebayo cooperated fully, becoming a key witness. His sentence was light due to cooperation, but his reputation was irreparably damaged. Freedom came with permanent exile from respectability. Bisola observed everything from a distance, refusing interviews, statements, or emotional displays. She mourned privately, not for the man Adebayo became, but for the man she believed he was. Love had nearly destroyed her life, but clarity saved it. With competitors dismantled, Bisola's empire rebounded rapidly. Investors returned cautiously, then confidently. Projects resumed. Trust was restored. Lagos forgave success faster than it forgave failure. The city moved on, as it always did. Bisola emerged stronger, sharper, and more guarded. She rebuilt not just her business, but her internal boundaries. Power no longer softened her judgment. She never spoke publicly about betrayal. Silence became her statement. In private, she reflected deeply on love, power, and generosity. She understood now that support without accountability invites destruction. Trust must be earned continuously, not gifted blindly. Bisola Ojo continued to build Lagos, but she never again built blindly. In a city where ambition dances with danger, she learned the most expensive lesson of all: loving someone who mistakes support for weakness can cost you everything if you let it. Time did not soften Bisola Ojo, it refined her. In the months after the scandal, she rebuilt quietly: new projects, stricter governance, sharper instincts. Lagos Island watched her rise again, this time with fewer interviews and more results. She no longer mistook noise for loyalty or affection for alignment. Success returned, but something else changed. Bisola learned to rest. Not from weakness, but from clarity. For the first time in years, she allowed herself moments outside ambition: morning walks, unhurried meals, silence without anxiety. They met not at a fundraiser or boardroom, but at a modest industry roundtable on infrastructure ethics. His name was Connor, an engineer-turned-policy advisor who had walked away from unchecked profit years earlier. He listened more than he spoke. He did not ask about her past, her wealth, or her scandal. He spoke to her as an equal, sometimes disagreeing without intimidation. There was no urgency, no charm offensive. Just respect, steady and unforced. Their connection grew slowly. Connor never asked for favors, access, or introductions. He had his own career, his own battles, his own scars. Bisola noticed how safe she felt, not emotionally intoxicated, but emotionally grounded. There was no imbalance to manage, no insecurity to soothe. Love arrived quietly this time, built on boundaries and shared values. Bisola did not confuse peace for boredom. She recognized it as growth. When Bisola finally allowed herself to love again, she did so with eyes open. She spoke honestly about betrayal, not as a wound seeking sympathy, but as a lesson learned. Connor listened without judgment or curiosity masked as concern. He did not promise protection, he respected her strength. Together, they understood that love should not diminish power or feed insecurity. It should expand both people without erasing either. Moral lessons from Bisola's story. Love is not proven by access. Giving someone proximity to your power is not affection, it is risk. True love respects boundaries and does not demand shortcuts. 2. Support does not mean sacrifice of discernment. Helping someone rise is noble, but growth without accountability breeds entitlement. 3. Insecurity is more dangerous than enemies. Rivals compete openly. Insecure partners destroy quietly. 4. Peace is not boring, it is earned. Drama often disguises itself as passion. Stability is what real partnership looks like. 5. Healing does not mean closing your heart forever. It means opening it wisely, slowly, and with self-respect intact. Thank you for watching. Please leave comments. Like, share and subscribe so that you will be the first to be notified of our next video coming up.